Recently, I've been exploring using AI to try to analyze certain things, and it seems to have a lot of trouble with minor-based things and chromaticism, especially when you start mixing minor-based scales into one system. It really has trouble with this. Even though in minor, it's very common to mix chords and scales from each type, as well as chromaticism. That's very common. I've been using Claude, and it seems to keep wanting to stick all minor things in the relative major, in this case B flat from G minor, and just really seems to struggle when you start using chords from all the minor scales. So I found something very simple to feed it, and it was because I watched this recently. The Keeper of the Grail theme from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. I'll just play through it first. It's actually very simple. This is the Hal Leonard version, by the way. Okay, so that's the theme I fed it. Because this is just straightforward the minor system, using elements of natural and actually just natural and melodic, with one chromatic harmony chord, which, by the way, AI struggles hard with chromatic harmony. So basic quick rundown, this is using both natural minor and melodic minor aspects, which combine to form a minor system. And if you're interested on how to do that, I do have a course on that in the description. This is using everything from typical natural minor walkdowns to a chromatic harmony chord, which, looked at differently, is just an augmented 6 chord and an inversion, French 6 to be exact. But there's another way to explain it too. So let's look at this. First off, it gives us the key signature of B flat. That's what it thinks it's in. And we'll actually go through a correct version after we look through this. Key centers and chord progressions. G minor chord is calling it the 6 chord. That's actually the tonal center, not your B flat. This is establishing a B flat tonality. Let's use John Williams again. The Keeper of the Grail sounds nothing like that. It sounds minor. So the only relationship is that G minor is written with 2 flats. And it's calling the D chord a secondary dominant. Geez, all the problems here. This would really mess somebody up. Here's a secondary dominant. That would be a secondary dominant in B flat, but not in G minor. It would be the 5 chord. It says measure 5 through 7. We have a C major chord and A major chords. Actually, they're not even in there at all. What is there is something that appears like an A-based chord, like an A flat 5, flat 7, which is really just an inversion of the French 6. We'll talk about this later. I just want to point out the problems. Extended D major harmony with sophisticated voice leading. What? It's actually using melodic minor aspects at that point. I actually don't know where it's getting that from, except maybe because there's an E natural, which is just a typical tone to use on some kind of half cadence like this in melodic minor, switching from natural minor. And then it says it wants to be a secondary dominant resolution, creating an unresolved quality. Actually, that's very resolved. That's a 5-to-1. It's not a 5 of 6 chord. It's a perfect cadence. So let's just keep looking at this. Then we'll go through what it really is. It says demonstrates sophisticated voice leading. I don't quite agree with that because there's a lot of parallelism and there's actually not that much contrary motion. There's nothing wrong with parallelism. Here's contrary motion. Okay, there's not a lot of that. And there's nothing wrong with parallel motion. Debussy, for instance, is a lot of parallel motion in the same direction. Now, down there it says the F sharp has given us some sort of suggestions of Lydian inflections. I don't even get that part right there. The raised fourth is that E from melodic minor, but I don't see how the F sharp is giving us any sense of Lydian. There's absolutely nothing in here that gives us a modal kind of feel of Lydian. This is Lydian. Sounds nothing like this. Not at any point do we get even a hint of Lydian at all. The E natural contrasts the generally flat-oriented key, yes, in melodic minor, but it is in no way some kind of modal element at all. The elements we're getting here is just the minor system, natural minor and melodic minor aspects, which is very common to do with minor systems and dates back a very long time in history. The last bad point, avoids a dominant tonic resolution. Well, that sure sounds like a dominant tonic resolution to me, 5-1. Preferring modal relationships. Where? Even if you use the minor 5 chord, which is common to use in minor systems and walk downs like that, to a major 5. And the minor system is a form of modal interchange. So let's go through this. It's just G minor, then second inversion, D minor, passing tone, G minor, D minor over F, E flat, 6th chord, D, 5. Perfect cadence. It said we didn't have one of those in there. In fact, this is very common minor stuff to do. We have the flat 3 with inversions, the 1, the 4 chord in first inversion common. Now here, I don't know if the Howlander transcription is correct or not, but I'm pretty sure he means a G minor over D, not a B flat. Let's switch from that C minor to the G, or to the B flat over D. It sounds a little more correct to the G minor over D, like a 6-4 chord, if you know what that means. And then we have our augmented 6th chord in inversion. And that's very common in chromatic harmony, by the way. This is something about augmented 6 chords in general, is they share the same tritone as the 5 of 5. So in the case of the French 6, it's almost like an A7 flat 5, which naturally would go to a D bass tonality. So whether you're using it in the regular augmented 6 position or in some kind of inversion, it always works out. And it was very common to invert augmented 6 chords in the Romantic era. So you can look at this either way, as an A7 flat 5, which would work in chromatic harmony, to any form of D. Like an altered dominant. We could use any form of the augmented 6 chord, like the German 6 with the A over the top of it, which produces A7 flat 5 flat 9, which would go naturally to some form of D. Actually, let's do a little experiment. You're talking about altered dominants. Let's do a sharp 9 from that G minor, using that C natural temporarily as the sharp 9, still works, going to some form of D. Dominant bass chords are super versatile like that. I did put implied D because it's doing the typical outward expansion of the augmented 6 chord. And then does this little melodic minor thing in the most typical spot, on the dominant. And in fact, it's very common to do stuff like this with full chords, when you hit the dominant using melodic minor chords over a pedal point. You'll find that a lot in people like Tchaikovsky's work or Rimsky-Korsakov. So AI has really done us a very bad injustice here, because we're just dealing with the minor system, natural minor and melodic minor, combined into one system of minor, with a very typical chromatic harmony move towards the dominant tone, inverted augmented 6. I mean, we could get something out of this for our own personal use. We could use that natural minor walk down use the German 6 over the A, which is basically an A flat 5 flat 9, 7 flat 5 flat 9, to give us a really tense way to go to our 5 chord. So even though that's not the chord he used, we can learn from this and recognize that you can still stick that A over an augmented 6 chord and it'll still sound correct going to that D chord. So maybe you never knew that. Bottom line, it's getting really hard to find actual correct info on studying this stuff. You use AI, I don't even know what they're feeding it, but most likely Reddit message boards and YouTube videos is my guess. Bottom line, be a little bit skeptical if you try to do your analysis with any sort of AI right now, because it's just not understanding simple minor systems and chromatic harmony at all. It really struggles with those two areas. It's good with very diatonic stuff, but it struggles in those two areas.